Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. So this birth that I am constantly referring to is a world that is made out of the seamless combination or integration of spirit, or that which we would call the non-physical or purely energetic or purely based in consciousness, and the physical realm, and the tool or the apparatus or the way, the methodology that these two formerly discrete realms get to now be combined and communicate together is a shape that is an interdimensional portal and also a new genetic dance movement or genetic structure that I call the flying rainbow lasagna. So flying rainbow lasagna, a relatively light-hearted vocabulary word for a profound concept. It is the shape of a torus or a donut or toroidal structure when we place that donut shape in a higher dimensional state. And blah, 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 this is going very fast. Aurora, what does it mean to place something in a higher dimensional state? Well, in this case, it means to place it in a context. So we have the idea of time as being what science describes as this endlessly expanding bubble that is expanding from the point of total density that science calls the Big Bang, but we could call it the convergence point, we could call it the singularity, we could call it the zeroth dimension. It is the presence of everything that includes all possibilities and all probabilities. And we can understand that there is a description of time as being an endless expansion from that central convergence point moving outwards towards the periphery. And science describes that we are living on the surface of that ever-expanding bubble of time, where the interior of the bubble is the past, and science does not even formally recognize the existence of the future, which would be anything outside of the surface of the bubble. So when I say place it in a higher dimensional context, what I mean is take that time bubble, and instead of just saying it exists in a vacuum with no future around it, place it in a context. Imagine it in a room. I want to say in a room, in a box with a fox, but seriously, put it in a context, and then you can move that time bubble relative to the context. And when you begin to do that, when you make it jump up and down very fast, moving it relevant to its context, or you can hold the time bubble in one place and jump the context up and down around it. Either one of these maneuvers is totally acceptable and gives you the end result of changing the shape of that initial bubble into the flying rainbow lasagna shape. And I should be more impeccable here because it's not just a bubble. That time bubble gets dimpled into this vortex shape that is the shape of two intersecting tori or donuts, and it makes this wonderful eight-lobed shape that I use in my sculptures, in my animations, and in my videos and my paintings. So if you look at some of my paintings, and you can check them out, free plug for me by going to flyingrainbowlasagna.com and click on the art tab, you'll see as a repetitive motif in a lot of the paintings, this, you could call it almost like a butterfly shape that has 4 football-shaped lobes that are all at 90-degree angles. And that's like a cross-section of the interior of the two intersecting tori. And so we understand, if you watch any of my webinars, and free plug for my webinars, it's called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And you can check it out on my YouTube channel, and you can also enroll formally. I have plenty of links to do so, and if you do, then you will get full lasagna. You'll get access to every bit of recorded lasagna information. So yeah, my whole idea is I'm not just some kind of profiteer trying to get as much money as I possibly can. I'm really trying to share these ideas and concepts as widely as possible while still maintaining the electrons flowing through the wires of my electricity by paying my bills and having a place to live. Brief pause. Because I find myself submerged or embedded here within this cultural context, blah, blah, blah. If you're new to my broadcasts, I am what I have described as a walk-in. I now understand that other people describe themselves as walk-ins and they have had different experiences, so I can't say it's a blanket term. What's the most accurate way of saying it is that I am a galactic scale abstraction. When I'm not wearing this body with this face, with these 2 arms and 2 legs, I look like a giant polygon, a multi-sided shape that moves and emits sounds and tones like tones. music. And it's not just a singular being. It is a living being that has many different facets, just like an ecosystem has many different forms of life that live within it. So this is like a harmonic form of consciousness. And I am in this present human form because I oscillated the DNA or the genetic structure of this body playing this new song. Let's say, for example, this song is the Flying Rainbow Lasagna song. Just like this piano, technically I have an electric piano, so I have the recording of vibrating strings. I'm being honest here. I would love to have a piano with real strings. They're very large and heavy to move around, so we'll have to see about that. But these vibrating strings make these noises, and because of the way that the sound waves nest together perfectly, that means that the circles fit perfectly, their edges touch together, they don't overlap, and they have a very nice visual pattern when we see them visualized. These notes are harmonic. That is what harmonics means. It's the difference between music and noise. Because that second part was noise, because it was disorganized sound waves that are not harmonically arranged. So harmonically arranged, this is when any waves, they're like perfect circles or perfect semicircles, when they fit within each other perfectly without any extra hanging off the side. And I use the analogy of, it's like if you're on your bed properly without your arm or your leg hanging out the side. And so, yeah, if all of the notes nest together perfectly, we consider that to be pleasing to the ear. These are organized sound waves. And same thing with light waves. So that's the basic theme of all of my, all my creative output, the artwork that I make and the music that I make. This is all about understanding these basic, they're really mathematical proportions, but don't run away just because I'm talking about math, because this is really an interesting and immersive form of math. Like, we're listening to math right now. And if you look at my paintings, you're looking at math. So there's, I understand some like innate cognitive dissonance. Many people find it difficult to understand math and Arabic numerals. However, we can understand that all of these perfectly nested shapes, I keep using that phrase, is a type of visual or auditory math. So we know we're on target when we're hearing beautiful music or seeing these beautiful harmonious shapes. And anyway, I vibrated the strings of this body in the same way that we can vibrate the strings of this piano in order to make a song. And I made a new song. The song that I made is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna song, or dance, or maneuver, or oscillation. And because I invented that, it was an innovation. It was something that had never happened before. Just like new songs are written, like the piano exists, or instruments have existed for a very long time, or even the idea of notes have existed for a very long time. But it is putting together those notes into new formats that makes new songs. I've got to save my work. Brief pause. So yes, DNA plays a song, and it's not all the same song. Each person has their unique song or their unique vibration, and that's appropriate. That is what we are here to do. We are each musicians in this beautiful symphony of life, and your body is your instrument, and you get to play with your genetic vibrating strings the songs that you wish to play. And that's a wonderful amount of freedom. I mean, really, what I try to get across with the information in these broadcasts and the information that I teach on my webinars is the idea of personal empowerment, but understanding the mechanism of, let's say, the genetic dance, or the how to be harmonically embedded within this larger field of consciousness, field of time, and musical extravaganza. We're in the symphony of life. We have these wonderful bodies. And P.S., if you have a body, pat yourself on the back, because it's a pretty huge accomplishment just to have a body and just to be born. And if you've made it to adulthood, if you've been swimming through the time field for more than 18 years, then seriously, it's a major accomplishment. It ain't easy. And that's because humanity has been genetically degraded about 10 or 20,000 years ago. The original wild, undomesticated format of our DNA was changed, and it was inhibited, and it was diluted, and we have become distorted from our original intended format, which were beings, or who were beings, that were purely telepathic light eaters. And so I speak about this a lot, the idea of not requiring the intermediary of a plant in order to ingest pure sunlight. So I practice my sun gazing each day, and I encourage people to do sun gazing, and I encourage it in a responsible and safe way. So I do not stare directly at the sun with my physical eyeballs, totally unprotected. In fact, actually, I wear contact lenses as corrective lenses, and they have a UV coating on them. So I'm, protecting myself from excessive UV radiation. And I would encourage people to do that because the sun is exceedingly bright. And I think that it's greater in intensity right now. I think that the emissions that are happening right now, this is like, August 2017, are more intense than they have been in the past. And also, like, I use protectant oils on my skin, like jojoba oil and other things like that. And I sit in the shade. Like, I want everyone to understand I'm not getting fried sitting in the middle of a giant, unprotected field I wear a hat. I wear, something to cover my body because, our bodies are sensitive, and there's a lot of this intense, it's energy and it is radiation, and it is also consciousness that is being showered upon us by the sun and the solar network rather. So I talk about that a lot on the webinar, the idea of doing yoga of the perception, stretching our perception to encompass new flexible positions that include the idea that the sun and the stars are living entities, living presences, and that photons are not merely particles or waves or something that science looks at and measures and can quantify, but that photons are feelers, that photons are elements of time, and that what we are being given or gifted or fed with in these emanations from the sun and the stars is that we're being given time. We're being showered with time all the time. So yeah, when we go outside and we expose ourselves fully to solar radiation, you're exposing yourself to these new and different possibilities and probabilities in the time field. And also, like, I don't plug my computer directly into the power station, where it is generated. I plug my computer into the wall outlet after all of the electricity has gone through its appropriate, diminishing transformation so that it's not going to blow out all of the circuits. So what I do in order to do sun gazing is, again, I usually wear a hat, or I sit in a way so that the sun is filtered through trees, or if I'm doing it inside, I use like the edge of the windowsill or the curtains in order to block out part of the sun. And it's really best to do it early in the morning or late in the day when the sun's rays are at their I want to say at their slantiest, when they are not directly overhead. I mean, unless, like, I used to live in Humboldt County. Unless you live in Humboldt County, where it's often foggy or overcast, and it's not excessively bright in the middle of the day, it's not excessively hot in the middle of the day. Like, that's a place where you might be able to ingest full sunlight. But it's just like, if you live in the middle of the desert, you don't go out in the middle of the day and do this kind of thing. So sunrise and sunset are the best ways to do it, best times to do it. And it is not just like sunbathing, even though sunbathing on a beach is very relaxing. It's an active form of ingestion, and it involves focusing one's consciousness and focusing one's awareness. So I talk about this a lot, the tendril of awareness that sprouts out of your forehead or emits or emerges out of the aperture of your third eye, and is somewhat like a tendril or like an elephant's trunk, that it's your attention. Your attention reaches through time. You can place your attention on anything that you wish and is non-local. So we can think about something that happened 20 years ago. We can think about something that happened 2,000 years ago. We can think about something that will happen in 20 or 2,000 years. And that is a great gift. And also, if it is uncontrolled, it's something that can impede our free traversing of the time field. Like, it can make us inhibited, because if you're putting your attention on the past, that's like sandbags dragging you down. It's like a lot of friction weighing you down and slowing your present trajectory through time. It's basically like you're not paying attention to the moment now because you're thinking about the past. And same thing with anticipating the future. And this is a problem if you're an athlete or a musician and you're like, this is the first note and this is the second note. I know this is going to be the third note, but I'm trying not to anticipate it because I'm trying to be in the moment. I'm trying to do each thing as it's supposed to be done. So that's what we do if we're masters. If we have mastered our mind, what we do is we move through time at one moment per moment, and this fosters our energy. There's no friction. It's like a perpetual motion machine where you're not losing that energy and vitality and creative life force. That comes from our innate divine connection. Each one of us has that wonderful, like a plug that plugs into the giant energy generating system of the cosmos. We all have access to that, but it is this verbalized talking mind, the hacked human operating system, and the installed virus of language that has for many thousands of years diminished humanity's contact with that nonverbal, and we could call it numinous or unformed, although it can have a structure, form of mind and form of consciousness. So I'm here on the radio. Usually I talk with pictures. Being on the radio, and I've done this show for a couple of years, and I love doing my radio show. I've had to learn, I joke, it's like fighting with one hand tied behind my back. How do I paint a picture with my voice? How do I use this hacked operating system of words in order to portray or give lasagna to people, how to give these lasagna ideas to everyone through this highly distorted medium. It's nothing wrong with being on the radio. It is the fact that we are using language. And language, this auditory symbolic sound structure, is inherently flawed. So words are packets of information, but those packets are often misinterpreted because people aren't always using their inner eye in order to examine the contents of the package. Like a person might just look at the surface of a word and derive the meaning from the, consensually established surface meaning of that word, but not be able to look within or behind at the user's intention for using that word. So, just like that's the idea of sarcasm. If you are totally emotionally tone deaf, when you're presented with sarcasm, you misinterpret it because you think it's literal. So if I'm being sarcastic and I say, "Oh, I really like your dress," I'm not being nice. I'm saying, "I really don't like your dress." And you can tell that's true by the tone of my voice. So the tone, or that interpretation beyond the mere veneer or surface of auditory symbolic structure, is what we're talking about here. That's insight. And so there's some subtlety in the interpretation of words, and the true heritage of humanity when we are undistorted is to be able to use pure telepathy, or a mind that is nonverbal. And you could describe it as a blissful mind, but I don't want to appear to be like advocating for lobotomized idiocy. It's not like I want everyone to be like, let's just all sit in perfect, cross-legged meditation and achieve a blissful mental state, while things are crashing down around us and everything is totally imbalanced. No, that is not my intention. My intention is for us to achieve that frictionless state of mind that we get to feel when we're functioning at optimum capacities. So I feel that frictionless state of mind when I'm painting, like when I'm in my groove, because with my paintings I'm very like, some paintings are exploratory, but mostly I pretty much know what I need to do. I know what color I want something to be. I know how I want it to look. So I don't have to be telling myself, pick up the red paintbrush now, pick up the green paintbrush, put violet here. I don't have to verbalize to myself. And a lot of it is nonverbal, looking, color choices, decision making, and kinesthetic, using my arm to actually move the paint and put the paint down. And that's one of the reasons why I do artwork. It is literally because I access my most highest functioning state of my personal mind when I am in, doing my painting. Just like for some people, it's running. So, I wish my body was more amenable to running. When I run, I'm like huffing and puffing. I'm like, trying to do it. The effort takes me out of my blissful mind. But some people are wonderful athletes, and when they're running, they're in their zone and they don't have to think. It's because you're running at optimum levels. So also sometimes when I'm playing the piano, especially if I'm playing a song that I really know, like it's woven into the muscle memory of your fingers. So you don't have to be thinking, oh, play a C. Oh, play an E now. You know exactly what notes are supposed to come next. You don't have to engaged with that verbalized mind, and the mind is simply flowing, or the time is simply flowing without having to have some verbalized expression. And in fact, when I'm playing the piano, verbalized expressions tend to be distracting to me, and I don't want them to come up. So again, I do that activity because it helps me get into my blissful mind. So these are both examples of being engaged with the world, being creative. Like at the end of these activities, I have a painting or a song, or, I've learned something, or an athlete has at the end of their experience muscles, or they have, caloric energy, or, greater levels of fitness. So all of these are valuable activities that we're engaging in. And I would even say that blissful sense of mind is the thumbs up from the cosmos. It's like saying, green lights, you are doing great. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. And I joke about this, and I use this example all the time. The thing that takes me out of my blissful mind, something like doing those phone prompts. If you have to call the bank and the phone prompt says, if you want this, press 1. And if you want this, press 2. And if you want this, and you have to go all the way through till 9. And then it says, and then if you want to speak to a live operator, press star. And it's like, I'm listening to those things. And as it goes through each thing, I'm like, wow, I feel my bliss dissolving. I'm totally not in my bliss as this is going on. And, there are certain things like whatever, filling out your taxes. That's definitely not a blissful state of mind. So I try to do as many of the things in my life and to engineer and structure my day so that I'm able to access that blissful, nonverbal state of mind while I'm still doing the things that I need to do that are a part of, creative self-expression. What I'm trying to say is I'm not encouraging people to sit on a mountaintop and totally tune out the world and to not participate, because I really feel that we're here as musicians and that your participation is needed. It's not like you're here in order to just sit silently and do nothing. All of us life forms are here for a reason. So yeah, you have these vibrating strings of your DNA, and you're meant to use them, and you're meant to use your thought structure for self-expression. And we're supposed to do it harmoniously with the rest of the cosmic symphony around us. So the rest of the cosmic symphony, that includes not just other humans or other macroscopic life forms. This also includes the microbiome and tiny micronutrients like, I'm trying to think of the tiny little molecules of various elements and crystals that we require in our body just for things like our neurology to function, and that plants require these micronutrients in order to effectively grow and, photosynthesize. So there's a level of consciousness in a tiny molecule or in a tiny microcrystal. And we as macroscopic life would not be able to support the music that we do if we didn't have those tiny microcrystalline structures inside of us. Same thing with the microbiome. And then think about the macroscopic beyond, the human level, the planet, the solar system, and the stellar network, that these are all fellow musicians. I wanted to say co-musicians. We are all beautiful expressors, co-creating expressors in this wonderful realm of expression, which is the physical realm, because the physical realm is one of the few places where all of these different divergent particles and forces and ideas or thought structures and forms of consciousness and possibilities and probabilities can meet and interact. So all of those different things that I just named, all of that divergent levels and layers of consciousness and different levels and densities, they all overlap at that convergence point or at the 0th dimension or at the source, which is also the destination. That's one place. That's like infinity. That's one place. Everybody's there. Everybody's in the same room. Send all of my mail to infinity because I'm there along with everyone else and every other possible self and every other possible thing that could possibly happen. So infinity, or that level of unity consciousness, is one place where all of these particles and forces and people can meet and interact. And the other place, or one of the other few places that we can meet and interact and share ideas and energy, is here. And I'm knocking on my table now. Here, in the physical realm, in the actual realm of densified light. We are using right now light, literal sunlight or starlight, that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light and has achieved this level of molecular density. And this matter, and this is all, I'm wrapping this all up from what I initially said this show is all about, this matter comes from the root word mother, meaning this material realm is like the womb that we've been gestating our consciousness in. And at a certain point, babies get born, and at a certain point, we leave this level of material reality and experience a new expanded level of reality, just like a baby gets born. And this is the birth of the new dimension that I am talking about. It's why I painted this painting called Birth of a New Dimension. It's why I named this show Birth of a New Dimension. And so we are all collectively giving birth. And that means it doesn't matter if you're a man or if you're a woman. It's not like this is just women around giving birth. Everybody is the parent, and also everybody is the child or the infant or the experiencer. So we are, we have these beautiful multicellular organic human bodies, and we're living here on the surface of the planet, and we are like tiny fractal microcosms of the planet and her journey or its journey. So the planet herself is expanding consciousness from levels of greater density, like, and when I say lower does not mean worse. Like, these are lower notes. That's not a bad note. It's just a lower note than that. All right. So these lower levels of density are very important places. This is where we have these experiences. It's where we exchange emotional energy, and that emotional energy changes our consciousness trajectory. Just like if you have a baseball or a billiard ball moving through space, it has a particular trajectory. When we give it different emotional energy, then that changes its physical trajectory. And so when we give people different emotional energy, either by feeding them food or by not feeding them food, or by, hitting them in the head with a hammer, or by giving them a hug, or by speaking to them using the virus of language, we change people's trajectory through time. So I joke and I appreciate that people tune into my different broadcasts. I joke and appreciate that people volunteer to be lasagnified by listening to the flapping of my moving mouth parts here on the radio or in a webinar, because literally this all is supposed to be consensual. Oh, just brief pause. Everybody that tunes in is agreeing to ingest some of this lasagna. Just like if you go to a restaurant or you go to a grocery store, you are agreeing to ingest some of that food and see what it feels like in your tummy. So that is it. I'm here as a consciousness newcomer to this realm, or, a visitor that didn't originate from here. And my whole intention is to be, a welcome visitor. At this point, I'm like a naturalized citizen. It's very much, if you imagine if you moved to France or to Cambodia, or, a completely exotic different place, and it had a different social structure, and it had different language and different customs, and it took time for you to integrate with the people there. However, at a certain point, when you've lived, like I've lived here for 17 years in this human female body as Aurora, when you live someplace for 17 years, like, you tend to care about it. I care about the planet that I'm on. I care about the social structure that I'm embedded within. I care about the other people around me. And a lot of my human anthropomorphic level experiences have been about coming to understand from a first-hand perspective the challenges that people are faced in this socioeconomic structure. So I am not just some person that lives on a cloud, doesn't have a body, and can eat pure sunlight, and is like, oh, the poor humans down there are suffering. I'm not like that at all. I'm actually like, hey, I've got a human body, and I've learned all about what food we're supposed to eat and what we're not supposed to eat, and how much things cost and how much things are sprayed with chemicals. And I've learned all about the medical system and how difficult it is to get access to medical insurance if you need to have something. I've learned personally from firsthand. I've learned from observing, friends, and I understand all about, everything about the economy, the need to earn money, the need to have a solid physical foundation in order to perform things that are creative, like making art and music and having a blissful mind. I understand completely that many people are running on the hamster wheel of just trying to earn money in order to survive, and that they are not able to, at this moment, engineer their lives in order to achieve optimum levels of mental bliss. And I will tell you this, none of that is by accident. When I look at the social structure here, I understand that it is intentionally created to take humanity out of the blissful, way of doing things. And so basically, it's like you can look at anything that people do that is a hobby or something that they choose to do voluntarily. Like people on the weekends, when they're away from their hamster wheel jobs, they like to go fishing, or sometimes they like to work in the garden. But then if we said, well, okay, your job is to be a commercial fisherman and you must catch this many fish every day, otherwise you will not be okay. And if we say you are now a commercial agriculturalist, where you either have to grow this many vegetables or you have to pick this many vegetables, and that's you make your quota, and then you get to have what you need, then all of a sudden those formerly enjoyable, bliss-inducing activities do not become enjoyable, bliss-inducing activities. Then they become horrible, burdensome chores. So it's quite amazing how the economic or financial structure, the incentivization of work with money as the reward, changes the experience of doing the actual work. And also, people sell their time, and that's a big deal, because what we really have as organic, multicellular, macroscopic humans, what we really have is a unique opportunity. We are embedded in the time field. So it's like we're perceivers. We're like the audience listening to the music, or the music is flowing over us. And at the same time, we're also the musicians, because you're not just some lump. You're not just some lump-in thing that sits there and, kind of like careens through time and, is totally uncontrolled. You are actually using your mind and your perception and your innate creativity to create each moment. So thank you for tuning in and eating this lasagna, because this lasagna is the idea or thought structure that helps each person to be a better musician or a better collaborative artist. You can think of it like painting a mural with many other people, that we are all trying to make our area of the mural look beautiful. And your area of the mural is your body and your particular life. And when every organism or, aspect of consciousness does this, then we end up having the most beautiful music. And when aspects of consciousness don't do this, it sounds ugly and it leads to disease and death. And I say this all the time. Death is the aberration, the aberrant social behavior, the thing that is not supposed to exist. Like, picking your nose or whatever, spitting on the street, things that aren't supposed to exist. So yeah, when we had a wild, undomesticated human format and our genes were not diminished or diluted, we did not have to hit the membrane of death. Just like driving down the road, you endeavor not to hit the guardrail. Or if you're playing the game of bowling, you try hard to make the bowl go down the middle of the lane, the center of the lane, not go on the periphery into the gutter. So hitting the membrane of death is analogous to getting into the gutter, and then you don't get to make the points by getting the pins at the end. So, and conversely, when we stay with that central trajectory going down the bowling alley and we hit the pins and knock them all down, that is like transcending this level of reality. And that's what we are here in this refinery of experience and what we are trying to do. So back to this birth of a new dimension and flying rainbow lasagna maneuver. It can be very difficult to tell whether you're driving down the middle of the road or whether your bowling ball is going down the middle of the road if there's all sorts of stuff blocking up your windscreen. It's kind of amazing. I mean, no creator would say, I'm going to create these people and I'm going to make them move through time, but I'm just going to make them blind. I'm just going to make them so that they can't see what's coming in the future, and then it will be a total surprise and they can die. That is not what a loving architect would do, and I really can assure everyone that the architect or the great composer and the great conductor, that this is really pure love, that this is not, none of the stuff that we're experiencing is accidental. It's all really intentional. They're really good artists or, really effective musicians, and that we were originally created with these instruments that are like virtuoso, violins like Stradivarius, the finest instruments, and part of that includes the capacity to see through time. So if we asked most humans right now on Earth, like, hey, see in the future, is that something normal? Is that something most people do? Or is that something superhuman? like Superman, most people would say, hey, that's superhuman. That's not normal. However, I will tell all of you that that is our birthright. It's like having a car that is designed with a windshield that you can actually see where you're going. So we're moving through time. We should be able to see where we are going. And if you can see where you're going down the road, going to hit the membrane of death. It's like, wow, maybe I should grip the steering wheel and redirect myself into this direction over here. And that's changing the trajectory, like I was talking about the billiard ball. And we do that by adding or removing emotional energy. So these are the empowerment ideas. And the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is one way that we can rearrange our DNA and clear off the windshield. And so again, it's one way. It's not the only way. It's something that I have figured out and that I am offering to others and hopefully inspiring or encouraging other people to use for themselves, because I have found it to be a very effective tool in my own life. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is not a proprietary secret that is just for me. The opposite. It's like if I found a new recipe that was really wonderful and I wanted to share it with everyone so that everyone could have this wonderful type of food. So essentially that is what the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. And if you have skepticism, if you're like, wait, Aurora, I've been controlled before and I'm afraid or skeptical that this is just another control system, I would say I applaud your skepticism, and please look to and examine all of my value system and everything that I am presenting and the way that I'm presenting it, and then consider whether you feel lasagna is right for you. And it's not something where I control the outcome. It's like, imagine if you invented the first pencil with an eraser. Somebody at one point invented a pencil with an eraser. And then you're like, here, this is what you can use to write stuff down and to draw, and you can do whatever you want. And if you don't like what you drew, you can erase it. That person didn't say, well, you're only allowed to make straight lines, or you're only allowed to make curved lines, or you're only allowed to write this word or that word. No, they're just like, here's the pencil, write what you want to write. That is how I feel about sharing the concept of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And I'm not doing this in an irresponsible way. Like, I truly wish for all of us to make beautiful, harmonious music. So part of this is cultivation of unconditional love, or that particular tone that we make when we move through time at one moment per moment, and it involves compassion. Compassion is literally a sympathetic vibration of your inner heart and feelings to other organisms' inner heart and feelings. So compassion is not just like a softness or an emotion or a mammalian experience. Compassion literally has to do with, if I pluck one guitar string, it's not a guitar string, but pretend it is. If I pluck this guitar string, the other strings around it vibrate sympathetically just because they are attached through the atmosphere. So compassion, in this definition, how I am presenting it, is the idea that we are all attached and conversant here in the physical realm, in the physicality, and that those levels of interconnection mean that what is happening to one is felt by others. And when you have compassion, then you're like, wait, what's happening? What that musician is playing over there is actually giving me a feeling over here. And then we begin to understand the interconnectedness of consciousness, and then we also begin to understand the necessity of taking radical self-responsibility for what we send out and working together as, as a whole, as a cohesive whole. And that is what this birth of new dimension really is and is going to be. It is what happens when we take all of these formerly divergent consciousnesses. Think about this, all of these minds that were encapsulated in their own individual egos. And the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a way to oscillate that membrane so that it becomes communicative with its context. So the membrane of the ego, this is a narrative structure that is built up, I want to say narrative fiction that is built up in early childhood or infancy, where you say, hey, this is my name is Joe Smith. Hey, this is my dog. Hey, this is my sweater. Hey, this is where I live. I live at, 123 Main Street, and it's my favorite food. And that's how people define themselves. And then at the end of your life, quote unquote, when you hit the membrane of death and die, then you don't have your body and you're not named Joe Smith anymore, and you don't live on Main Street anymore. And you have to relinquish those defining elements of consciousness because they are literally temporal. They are the elements or descriptors of your consciousness that are based in being submerged in time. And you're also an abstract, timeless being. And when you're an abstract, timeless being, you're not defined by your physical address of where you live, like on your driver's license, or even your favorite rainbow-colored sweater, or your dog, or your cat, or your job, or anything that you've done in this life, like any accomplishment that you've done, like painting a painting or running a marathon. You're not defined by any of those things. So we're defined by these more eternal characteristics that are, sorry to use the word again, characteristics or aspects of character that travel with us beyond merely being submerged in time, that those are eternal characteristics, and that is who we are, kind of like no matter where we are. So I'm this creative person. I make artwork, I make music, and I sing, and I share my ideas, and I would be that type of being if I was a fruit fly, or if I was a giant redwood tree, or if I was a cloud, or if I lived on Jupiter. Like, I would be a creative person who expresses themselves and integrates with others, no matter what my format is. If I'm physical, if I'm non-physical, no matter where I live, I would find some form of creative expression and, find the other musicians and jam together with them. And that's universal. So each one of us, when you are like the bowling ball going down the center of the bowling alley. I call it the path of least likelihood. It's the path that goes all the way up the center of the time vortex and returns directly to the convergence point. When you're aligned with that timeline, what you're aligning with are the core values of who you are, not the peripheral values that are often defined by the experience of being submerged in time, which is like, is my car I drive, is my house where I live, is my job where I work, and is my dog that I feed. So what happens when we begin to vibrate that membrane of the ego and make it more porous or more communicative with the outside context? Because we develop this sense of self and we say, this is me. I joke with my tough guy voice, I'm looking out for number one. It's like the cell membrane, the first time that a cell membrane was ever invented, and it differentiated the intracellular goo from the extracellular goo. And the little cell said, wait, now all I have to do is metabolize what's inside of this membrane. All I have to do is take care of the inside. I don't have to care about the outside. The outside is someone else other than me. But the truth is, we are connected on profound levels of consciousness, on the level of, microorganisms and, tiny crystals. We are connected through time, and we are connected through DNA vibration. So it's an effective level of development to go through to say, well, first we're going to create this membrane and we're going to make a distinction between inside and outside, but that's not the end of the journey. And the next step of the journey is to then understand context. Because if you're part of a multicellular organism, all of the individual cells are like, hey, I'm looking out for number one. But then it's like, wait a minute, these other cells are all here and we're all in something. And then you start to recognize there's a larger context, and the larger context is the larger entity within which you find yourself as an individual. So for us as individual experiencers of the time field, what we start to understand is that we are submerged within the time field, and the time field is a living being, and it has a giant metabolism. And what happens in each of our lives, in each of our minds, and each of our bodies actually really matters to the overall health of the time field. And this is why it's not okay when the time field is distorted. Like, it's not okay if some guys over here cover your ears and going to make ugly noise. It's not okay if some punk rock anarchist, non-participant in the symphony is over there doing that with their music, because we're all connected. So this also has to speak to the, my journey into this body and the ethics of doing that, because I know that just by being here in this body and playing my Lasagne music, that I'm affecting other people around me. And so is this guy down here. Everybody's affecting everybody. So there are ethics here. And in the end, what happens is the beings who are harmonious, well, coherent light waves travel much further than disorganized light waves. So this is basically what is happening, that we have a body that is a time body. You could also consider it a light body or an information body. And when it is organized harmonically, like organized coherent waves, organized coherent light waves create a laser, like a laser beam. And that beam is focused, it doesn't disperse, so that beam can travel a lot further than disorganized light waves. And that's what this is all about. I said refinery of consciousness. It's not like people are bad, evil, horrible, even though there are definitely bad, evil, horrible people out there. This is more understanding that we are all auditioning as musicians to continue with our consciousness into the next level of reality, which is this birth of a new dimension. Because when we give birth to this new dimension, what happens is not only does the ego and the context come together, but the formerly divergent worlds of spirit, energy, consciousness, non-physicality, the abstraction, comes together with the world of physical matter. I'm touching my table, I'm touching my chair, I'm touching my leg, that these are all aspects of physical matter. And it's been mostly the mental construction or ideology or mental perspective that humans have been saddled with for a very long time that has made this artificial distinction. So like I said, just like the creation of the cell membrane, it's an effective moment of development or stage of development, but it's not the end of the process of development. So first individualization, then recognizing context, and then recognizing how individual affects context and context affects individual. So we are all wonderful, amazing creators, and we are creating with our perception. So if you are perceiving this bifurcation or delineation between self and context, you are helping to create and uphold that. That's what I mean. We are experiencers in the symphony. We're also creators in the symphony. So in the mural, giant visual art project. We are here contributing to the collective art project, and we are also being affected by the collective art project. That's why having a physical body, especially in this time and place right now, is such a wonderful opportunity. When spirit and matter come together, what it means is that your inner realm, and when I say inner, I'm using air quotes, because we call it the inner world. It's like what's inside of your head, your thoughts and your dreams and your ideas and your consciousness. It's basically everything that science can't measure, that you can't measure with a measuring tape or put on a scale, or, that it can't be photographed. All of that stuff that we consider to be inside and invisible seamlessly integrates with and becomes manifested into the outer realm of physical matter and hard-edged objects and other people and experiences. Literally, this is what we're supposed to be doing, painting reality with the paintbrush of our minds. So for a very long time, this innate creative capacity has been hijacked from humanity, where it's kind of like, I could describe it as humanity has a spastic limb, or a limb that is out of control, that is errantly creating reality. And I can also describe it as a hijacking of the basic raw materials of reality creation. If reality is like bread, and bread is made out of dough that goes into an oven and gets baked and hardened and, made into real stuff, the dough is our imagination. The dough is that formless emission that comes out of the human mind and consciousness that is saying like, oh, I want blah, blah, blah to happen. Whatever, like, oh, I want a delicious piece of pizza right now. And you're imagining it and wishing for it. And so think about the ways in which right now in this time and place, how humanity's desires have been hijacked. Like very few people say, oh, I really want to get up at the crack of dawn from my stupid alarm clock and make my coffee and jump in my car and have to drive on a 12-lane highway and go and work in my cubicle and pollute the atmosphere. Like, no, people actually don't want to do all of those things. So then we say, why do we have such a huge, pervasive social structure and so many people doing those things? And the answer is the dough of their consciousness, the dough of their imagination, what they imagine to be possible in reality has been hijacked. And it's been made into these commercial buns, like these commercial dinner buns. And every bun is the same and every bun tastes horrible. And I'm trying to tell everyone, don't let your dough get stolen. Don't let your innate, imaginative, divine creative capacity be hijacked or stolen. This is the problem that I said about people selling their time. So I had to get an education, like I'm new to this place. I had to learn about things. I didn't understand that in some jobs, some places where you work, that it's not just your physical body or your physical output that is being sold by the hour, that it's also your mental output. Like I worked in different types of jobs that were very structured, and like being a custom framer, basically I had to produce a certain number of framed pieces of artwork each hour, but it didn't matter what my mind was doing. So I could think my own thoughts or, listen to music or sing along with music, as long as my measurements were correct and my work came out looking good. I had to learn that there are actual positions where it is considered to be a betrayal of your boss and employer if you are thinking non-work related thoughts during the workday. That blew my mind, literally. So I'm understanding that because your mind is your steering wheel that you use to drive down the road of time. And if you're not only, it's like, I got to sell my hour for $10 or $15 or $20 an hour. Like, it's not just that you're selling your time. It's not just that you're selling your kinesthetic muscle movements. You're selling your consciousness. You're selling your thoughts. And consciousness and thoughts are literally what put us on a particular timeline. So now we can really see how profoundly symptomatic, how diseased this approach is. And this is the domesticated human situation. And this is literally why I am so passionate about sharing the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna, which basically means that each person is gifted with a pencil with an eraser, a new opportunity to do a new genetic dance movement and rearrange DNA in their own body. It's like play your own music and transform your consciousness, transform or redirect your trajectory through time, and have a different experience. By the way, DNA doesn't just determine your gross protein structures, like the shape of your nose or the shape of your toenail or whatever, if you have long or curly hair. The DNA actually is the integument that ties you together in your flight through time from moment to moment. So it's even more profound if you understand that selling your time and exposing yourself to thoughts that are not the thoughts that you would naturally think if you were unimpeded affects the dance of your DNA to the point of putting you on different timelines. And then those timelines, I want to make a smashing noise, crash into the membrane of death. So death is the aberration, and our society is set up to encourage this seeming inevitability of death and to take away the self-empowerment that would allow us to transcend the experience of having to die. And what the alternative would look like. Well, Aurora, what would the alternative experience look like to death? It would be continuity of consciousness even when we transcend this level of density of matter. Because I said also, matter, the material world, mother, the womb, we're being born. So this birth of a new dimension means that now our minds are overtly connected to reality and are overtly shaping physical matter. And that means that we're in a new level of reality where, first of all, you have to take radical self-responsibility for what's inside, because what's inside becomes the outside. And also, so as we become genetic virtuosos and as we are learning how to overtly sculpt and transform the reality around us, like getting that pencil with an eraser means you are the auteur of your own existence, and each person is writing their own script play and even being their own costumier and wardrobe and makeup and casting. It means that you are in charge of your life and of your life experience, and of course you're integrating your own narrative with everyone else. As we are understanding this, we're understanding that your body might change. It might transform. It might not always look like this particular one-faced, two-armed, two-legged individual. However, if you are maintaining continuity of consciousness, that's like when you are able to do lucid dreaming, if you're able to go down through the membrane of consciousness into deep dreaming, and then come back up and understand that that's where you are. You know consciously that you're in a level of dreaming, and then come back up out of that level of dreaming into daily waking consciousness and remember all the things that have transpired. Well, those practices and those inner cultivations help people, like some of the meditators of the Far East, to be able to maintain continuity of consciousness across lifetimes. The idea of, an ancient meditator who has lived in various bodies and been able to give clues to the people around them, like recognizing their walking stick or their eating bowl or something like that. So that is the idea. I'm not saying that you have to die and be reincarnated. I'm saying that the continuity of consciousness is a similar it's an expression of inner willpower and focus of your own mind to be able to remember everything that you've experienced, even while the format that contains your consciousness changes. So again, you do not, there, so much of this is like not having to be afraid, and having super responsibility, because if, like on my artwork, I'm responsible for my artwork. I put those colors there. I made those lines shaped like that. And you know what? If there's a mistake somewhere, it's there because I made it. I cannot scapegoat. I cannot say, oh yeah, someone else broke into my studio last night and they painted that little square orange. It's totally wrong. Like that, I can't do that. So same thing with our bodies, same thing with our lives. What we need to begin doing is taking radical responsibility for what is quote unquote inside, because what is quote unquote inside is actually becoming outside. The inside and the outside literally become the same world. And then you also understand, wow, you're not swimming around in your own private kiddie pool. You're connected to an ocean of consciousness. So your inside is affecting a lot of other people's outsides, and other people's insides is affecting your outside. And that begins to be this beautiful symphony of life where we recognize that we are like that guy's playing that note and I'm playing this note, and we recognize that we are working together, just like plants in a meadow or, organisms in an ecosystem. So it is a very outdated mode to say either we are survival of the fittest barbarians working in endless biological competition with each other. That's that tough guy voice. I'm looking out for number one. Or we are collaborators. And that's how I view the natural world and the world of ecosystems. And that is how I view humanity when we have healthy egos and when we are learning how to integrate with the other musicians that are here. Because this is necessary for the next, for us to continue to have consciousness and for us to continue to be in the material world. And this is part of being given birth to. This is part of our birth process. So beginning to understand the interconnectivity of all of the life that is just on this planet. That's part of the first part. And then expanding or dilating that interconnectivity of life, not just to what's happening in our mere locality, but to every planet in our solar system and life that is in different places. So I also understand I'm speaking within the cultural context of a culture that does not even formally recognize the existence of organic multicellular life on a place other than this planet. Like that is still considered a radical concept. It's quite amazing. So yes, recognition of life on this planet and the interconnectivity and, the necessity of all of that life to support one another. That literally, like if you wanted to kill all microbes, that's fine. You could do that, but you would also kill yourself because you need microbes in your tummy to eat, help you digest your food. And so this is beginning to understand when we put our foot down, are we squashing a bunch of other organisms? And this is all preparation for the time when we will become true expert star travelers. Oh, I'll get into that another time. Thank you so much for volunteering to come here and eat some lasagna and transform your genetic structure. Thank you for doing your own individual dance. Keep on being the auteur of your own existence and make something beautiful. Let's make beautiful music. Thank you.